Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Powerful Man Show. I am your host, Doug Holt, with my co-host, Tim, the Powerful Man Matthews. What's going on, brother?
Very well. You?
I'm doing very well also. Having a good start to the day, doing some sleep training at my house. So I think I explained this to you before, but I have a 1-year-old daughter, and she was into what's called a sleep regression. And so we're doing sleep training, which means not sleeping ourselves, trying to get her back to a normal schedule of sorts. So lots of fun at the Holt household right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actual fun.
I'm kidding. We are having fun. Last night we had people over, which is always nice. You know, with COVID and everything, we've isolated ourselves. You know, I bought a house on the end of a road backed up to National Forest, and had people over last night, had a great time. My wife did a course on human design.
Okay.
You heard about that?
Don't think I have.
Okay. I didn't know anything about it either. I mean, I knew it's not true. I knew it because Darcy, who works with us, is really into it. And they keep asking, whenever someone asks me for what time I was born, I knew they're doing my astrological chart or human design chart. And human design is kind of like this way to understand your personality and who you are, et cetera, et cetera. So the women were it was a flood of information, and the women were loving it, right? They were digging this, and it was really interesting because they did what my human design is. And I, of course, made fun of a lot of it, but it was really kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Is it accurate?
Well, I mean, is astrology accurate? People who believe in it think it is. I am such a skeptic on all of those things until I actually experience it. But kind of like astrology, when you start to talk, I'm an Aries, right? Which is going to be hard for you to believe that, Aries, what are they described as? Very assertive, very fiery, can be a little bit more alpha, dominant, leaders, really get stuff done, drive things forward. Probably doesn't describe me at all, though, right? So
yeah, I think you just added a couple of characteristics in there to describe it.
Sexy, really good looking, smart, very humble, But that's, the human design thing, basically it comes what they described me, and I'm paraphrasing they paraphrased it for me, and now I'm paraphrasing, like I gave him a telephone. But my type is that of a doer, right? And one of the things they said, which I thought was interesting, is the human design says that people with my design, I don't know what it's called, but we are best suited to react to a situation, like wait for the situation to come to us. And then through our gut instinct, it's actually our sacral center, we tune into that to react to the situation.
Okay.
So Darcy, who you know, and who's worked with me for over 10 years, she thought it very accurately described me, right? So did my wife.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
Especially the good-looking smart part.
Yeah. It wasn't in there.
It was when I tell it.
Yeah. So here's something I want to talk about. So there's a lot of messages out there, right, in marketing that talk about having it all, talk about the idea of work-life balance. And I'm curious as to how much you believe it to be possible and true to strike a work-life balance that enables you to have it all, quote unquote. When I say have it all, relationship is on fire. At the same time, business is soaring. Your health is just on point. You're feeling grounded and centered and coming from a place of just pure passion and joy. Your kids are doing great. Bank accounts are bursting. You're full of energy. You're jumping out of bed in the morning. You're just grabbing life by the balls, basically, and just running with it.
So my answer is yes and no. And it's kind of like a lot of things. As you're saying that, right? I'm living that life now for my former self, if that makes sense. So I'll describe what I mean. And I also want to talk about this work-life balance and this counterculture. Like there's a lot of people in marketing that are going against this right now, which is what you're supposed to do in marketing, right? You're supposed to throw rocks at disbeliefs or commonly held beliefs. So absolutely, yes, you can have it all and work-life balance. I'm proof of it to my former self. And the reason I say to my former self is because when you get there, you start setting new goals, right? So my bank account is bursting compared to what, when I wanted it to get to this place, right? That would have been bursting for me. But now that I'm there, there's a new milestone, right? So you love doing alpine. You're doing the alpine leadership course in the UK right now. So as a mountaineer, you know that if you're not looking at the map, you're like, I want to hike that mountain, and you hike up it, and it could be a really big, tough mountain that when you get to the top, often, especially if you're in a mountain range, like where I live, you're like, shit, there's another bigger mountain. I couldn't see it. And so now you got to go back down the other side of the mountain to go back up to this bigger one. And so I think that's where it throws a lot of people off with this whole idea of, can I have it all? Because when I look at my life and a lot of lives of most of the guys in the brotherhood or the inner circle, right? Most of them have it all. It's just when you get there, you start setting bigger goals, because what was once impossible is now possible. Thus, you set your vision from a different paradigm of what you want.
Okay. And I hear that. And as you then and anyone goes through growth, let's say, you set the new goal, you go after it again. And by default, to achieve it, you've got to grow, right? And in the growth, there is going to be disorder. There is going to be a healthy amount of controlled chaos and stress.
Yep.
Maybe a little bit of uncontrolled chaos and stress to a degree, maybe, right? And here's where and I don't have an answer for this. It's just something I was considering this morning. For me, the idea of work-life balance is the idea that there's two things that are equal, right? In order for there to be balance, that would state that things don't change and it remains balanced. Obviously, if you imagine like a little pendulum maybe, or like a seesaw would be better. You got the fulcrum in the middle, other two things on either two ends, they're balanced, right? And for me, as I think about this, instead of trying to strike a work-life balance that might be a little bit unrealistic, is it more about finding a rhythm, right? A pulse and a heartbeat? Because I agree with you, right? There's always going to be another thing, because that's the nature of the game. That's the nature of part of being a human being, is that we feel alive by having purpose and direction. It's how we literally are designed and wired to thrive. It's one of the needs that we have to quite literally thrive across the board as well, right? So if we accept that to be true, and if we accept it to be true that there's always going to be another thing, right? We're always going to be on the path looking for the next summit, because that's who we are. It's the nature of the game as entrepreneurs. Then by default, things are never going to be in balance.
So yeah. And I never answered the work-life balance question you asked me. And this is the counter argument to this that some people out there as marketers are doing, is you're never in balance. You're constantly in flux. It's kind of like the idea of multitasking. Are you multitasking or are you task switching? Now, the current kind of paradigm is no, you can't multitask, you're task switching, right? And I say current paradigm because that may change. And also, what is work-life balance to you? Whereas me, right? I love what we do at the Powerful Man. So sometimes I'll come down here to my office, which is this floor of the house, and I'll basically, if I'm down here 8 hours or 10 hours, right? And then I go up and hang out with my family. To me, that is work life balance, right? Because it's life and I really enjoy it. Whereas to somebody else that hates their job, work life balance may be showing up to the office as little as possible and as much time doing something else. So I think it's very individualistic, right? Of
Mm-hmm.
what that could be. It's the definition of what it is. And I think what sticks a lot of people is they think that everything has to be in equal proportions, right? To your point of
Mm-hmm.
what's that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no way. And it's going to ebb and flow. There's times when I'm called in, whether it be consulting or something else, I'm called in to put out fires and emergencies that are going to take more of my energy and time at that particular moment in time. There's
Mm-hmm.
other times when I'll just cruise, right? I'm going to take 4 days off, a month off. I mean, I took 3 months to travel, around North America and Canada not too long ago. And I took another time. So it's what it means to you for this work-life balance thing. It's the same thing with have it all. What does have it all mean to you? The have it all lifestyle. What does it mean to each individual?
Mm. And I think, in order to have this idea of having it all, is it really possible to have it all, right? Everything, all five territories being on fire at the same time, let's say. And I think, we're not going to sit here and obviously tell people what to think, right? It's up to them to come to their own conclusions on this. But I think one of the truths, in my opinion, we get to accept if we are on this pursuit of quote unquote every territory being on fire, right? Is eradicating the idea of balance and embracing the idea of rhythm. All
Love it.
right. And if
Yeah.
there's going to be a rhythm because you are going to be in a state of flux and there's always going to be another thing, then by default, you don't delay your happiness and do the things that are really important to you and bring you joy, like picking your kids up from school or like going on a date with your wife or whatever it is. For that one day in the future when you've finally finished your work and arrived, because as we've just said, right, the other truth is that it's never going to be done. There's always going to be another thing. So with that being said, if there's always going to be a state of flux and we're going to be in a rhythm to be able to flow with that flux, then you've got to know what works, right? You kind of like launching a product. You want to get the minimum viable product, right? You want to get it out there into the marketplace. You get data, you get feedback, you go again. Do we run with it? Do we do, you've got it, right? In order for every area to be thriving, so your relationship to be on point, your health, business, I think part of it is being able to distill it down to, okay, what is the minimum that I must do that moves the needle in each of these areas, right? So I'll take my life, Amelia and I. What I've come to discover is for our relationship to be in a place where Amelia wants to connect with me, she wants to be intimate with me, a couple of things get to happen. And those two things are just hanging out with her. For me, honestly, in the beginning, I enjoy hanging out with her, but also, I could be there, but not really be there. And I didn't really see the point. I could have been working. I could have been, why don't we go do something? If we're going to hang out, let's go for a walk. Let's go do something, right? But for us, we've just fallen into the habit of about 9 a.m. So I'll wake up, do my morning routine, work out, do all that stuff. At about 9 a.m. by the time Amelia's up and done, finished doing what she does, we'll sit down together and have a drink, coffee, she has matcha, whatever. And we'll just chat for half an hour, maybe 45 minutes, put the radio on and just listen to music. And what I've noticed from keeping that in there, even as we've got busier with the Powerful Man and more projects have come on and more people are wanting to join the movement and all that stuff, and there's training staff. If I let that one thing slip, that has a huge effect on her energy and her willingness. Because at the end of the day, once I've finished work, I'm tired and I'm not always in the best place to really inject into Amelia and into the relationship, right? Because, I've been making decisions all day. So if I, try and plan in, okay, well, we're going to do some stuff on an evening, I don't really perform in the way and give the presence to her that I would do on a morning. So that's one of the things. Then the other thing for me is making sure I'm working out, making sure I'm doing stuff for me, because in order for her to want to be intimate, she's got to feel connected. But also, I get to bring a confidence and a level of playfulness and leadership and fun and prioritization of her to the relationship. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? On the idea of the minimum viable product to be in a rhythm, right? So everything to have it. Have you seen that in your life, Doug, or do you see it differently?
No, I do see it in my life, and you're quick to ship, right? As we say in business, right? You want to have, the most viable product and get it out to the marketplace. But you're also talking about, what I'm hearing in your talk is about Keystone Habits. So we teach the guys. So one of the products that you developed, and then the other coaches kind of added their, what I'll call their magic on, as everybody does, is the men's chart of intentional living. We call it the COIL, right? For short, but it's the men's chart of intentional living. And that actually has those keystone habits in. It's almost like the 80-20 rule, right? What is the 20% of the outputs to give you 20% of the inputs to give you 80% of the outputs that are going in through there? It's a similar process. And I definitely know what it is for me. We've talked about this on a previous podcast, right? For me, in the area of health, the more flexible I am, right? As I'm getting older and getting tighter, which is hard to believe it's possible, the more I want to work out and do other things in different areas.
Yeah, I didn't even think of it like that, to be honest. But yeah, you hit the nail on the head with the keystone habits. Because the reality is, as entrepreneurs, one of our greatest strengths is our ability to take things on. One of the greatest weaknesses is the ability to take things on.
What you're talking about.
Yeah, and we just can't do it all, right? So if you wanted to paint this picture of having it all in the area of relationships, and you pin in a picture that just requires you to do so many things, it's just going to be a very difficult expectation for you to live up to.
Yep.
So again, the keystone habit is key. And that leads to my second point, to make it easy or easier for yourself to be able to have it all in all the 5 territories. Keep all of those plates spinning, have the rhythm, like we've said, identify the keystone habit, then have an operating system. And I get it. Honestly, I didn't think of it as the chart of intentional living as I was just sat contemplating this morning. The idea that came to mind was a plane, right? A plane never goes too far off course. Well, it's always off course, but it stays within a boundary, right? And that's because of the GPS that it has. It has an internal GPS. And the way that you can lighten the load is obviously to have that internal operating system that really makes it easy, all right? And that is thinking about the chart of intentional living. And one of the things I love about it, because the keystone habits are just there, very clear to see. You match those with your Google Calendar, and then as every demand and decision gets placed on you during the day, it's almost like a filtering process. It filters out the rubbish.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. And that's why it's so powerful. It's designed for male business owners, and it does what it's called, the chart of intentional living, right? We call it the COIL in the podcast. We don't explain what it is, but guys that are going through the movement have access to it. Maybe we'll put out a training on this for the listeners or some people that they can get access to see what the chart of intentional living, the men's chart of intentional living really is all about. But I think, it is having those keystone habits, but also knowing like your alpha rise and shine, like knowing that if you this is a need, right? This is in the brush your teeth category, right? Not the get a massage category or occasionally I will do this when it feels good category. No, I just do it. And I think part of what comes up for me in this conversation, Tim, is this idea that you need motivation, right? When I'm motivated, I'll do that. That's not how motivation works. Motivation, this is proven, motivation occurs when you do the action. right?
Mm.
You do the action. I mean, how many of us are like, I don't want to go work out today. You'll get this later on in life, Tim, but I'm sore, all of these things. But once you're there and you start working out, you get into it, right? You want to crush it and you feel the
Mm-hmm.
groove, right? And the same thing with work. And sometimes it's the relationships, you like me, we have a partner that loves quality time. I can't sit still. It's like the worst thing for me to sit on the couch and just sit and don't love it. Don't enjoy it at all. And I used to try to get stoic about this or get spiritual, and I need to make myself calmer or what have you, right? And it's not that I'm not calm. I just don't enjoy it. And it's the difference between focusing on your strengths and what you're good at and what have you versus trying to fix a quote unquote weakness. I don't see it as a weakness, right? So when we go back to what are those little things like you do for Amelia by spending quality time, that that's going to get you further in your relationship. You just add those as a keystone habit, and eventually it just becomes who you are and what you do. And we're bringing full circle back to, can you have it all? Well, the truth is, if you go back to Tim Matthews 5 years ago, right, that guy didn't have these things that you just do naturally and don't think about in place, and you've put them in place as an example, right? You
Mm-hmm.
put them in place. And so you don't think about it. Now you're like, okay, here are the other habits I'm putting in place. And I'm not quite there yet. I'm using you as the example, but every guy can relate to this. But it's because we forgot how far we come. We have, as men and as business leaders, we have an amazing gift of forgetting, right? We forget what the goals were. It's almost like if you ever go back and look at your goals list, if you're an achiever from 5 years ago, and you're like, oh crap, I haven't looked at this in a long time. Wow, I did that one. I did that one. I did that one. You just forget about it because you're forward thinking, setting goals in the future. And that's where we can get thrown off with this whole work-life balance idea.
Yeah, I agree. You make some great points. Again, it touches on so many of the philosophies, right? Living from the outside in versus the inside out. Having appreciation as well, because obviously when you start to live from the inside out and you do Alpha Rise and Shine, you do other things in with it, you really start to put yourself in a place where you are living for today. But also you've got a navigating system through which you can make decisions and stay on track to then be able to tick all those boxes, and you might not tick every box every day. But over the course of the week, you're going to be ticking them. And that, the final thing that I was thinking about as I was contemplating this morning was the power of who you surround yourself with as well, right? Because if you're surrounding yourself with other people who maybe don't believe that you can have it all, maybe believe that it's got to be one or the other, it's got to be business or your relationship, it's got to be your health or spending time with your kids. It's kind of, no disrespect, but it's kind of like a bit of a victim mentality as well, isn't it? Right? It's not really taking ownership of your life and creating what you desire. You're basing your life and your outcomes on a role model that isn't empowering, right? So anyway, point being is, I know for me, there's been times in my life when obviously you doubt yourself, right? But then being around guys like you and Arthur and other guys in the team, and the guys in the movement, just remind you, like, you see somebody having a win. I just like, in fact, the past few weeks, seeing the guys posting their workouts and how they're doing and the results they're getting. Those days when I don't want to work out, I'm like, oh man, but look at Tom. Yeah, look at Tom on there.
Tom's crushing it.
Yeah, and that's the power of it, right? The power of being around other people that are not perfect, but have the belief that, hey, I believe it's possible to have it all. I don't believe it's possible to be perfect. It's not going to look perfect with me having it all. It's not going to be in balance. There's going to be a rhythm that I get to embrace and an ebb and a flow. But as long as I have a set of rules to live by and an operating system that complements those rules, then, I'm around the right people too. I'm never going to stray too far off track, kind of like the plane. I'm always going to arrive at my destination.
Yeah, it's huge what you're saying. And this is why a lot of guys, stay in the brotherhood after year 1 to year 2, et cetera. It's because you're the sum of the people you're spending your time with. If you look around and all of a sudden you start hanging out with a bunch of people and all they do is, as soon as 5 o'clock comes around, they're cracking a 12-pack of beer, they're eating pizza, everybody is obese. Statistically, you're going to be obese soon. Conversely, if you're hanging around with a bunch of people at every time at 5 o'clock, these are the people you spend time with. They all go for a run. They're going to run a 5K every day. And then afterwards, they're going to have a healthy meal and good conversation, some jokes. Odds are you're going to be healthy. Odds are, right, you're going to be following the same thing. It's just, you're the product of your environment more so than you even think, right? We all want to think we're so individualistic. And I think that's been the secret to my success, Tim, is I've always, I was taught that really early, right? I was taught that, I think it was first grade it was fifth grade. My teacher had on the wall, and I remember this as one of those things that's cut out, stationary with birds and really kind of ugly if I remember it. But it said, birds of a feather flock together. So choose your friends wisely. And I made fun of it back then, but I don't remember anything else about that time of my life except for that quote. And as I got older, I started to really strive to surround myself with achievers, right? Not just achievers in money and business, but guys like Tom, right? Tom's crushing with fitness, who inspires you, me, see Ian that's on there, and a bunch of other guys that are in the brotherhood that are crushing it in their fitness too. And people are commenting, and it's motivating. And it's the people you spend time with, spending time with the coaches.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying it sure is. It's kind of learn through osmosis, don't you? You grow through osmosis. Everybody else, the conversations you're in, you've seen other people rise. So yeah, it was interesting because I didn't know where this conversation was going to go. Honestly, I was thinking about it this morning. Probably forgetting how far I've come, maybe how far we've come. Also myself, because it's easy to. I'd probably say as I reflect on this conversation now, the past this year has been such a whirlwind. So far, it's crazy the amount of things that we've got done. We've launched a non-profit. We're developing a summit that will go live soon. Tons of guys going into the brotherhood. One-on-one's going to just. I'm not going to list everything because they'll probably just bore the listeners. But point I'm making is it's been fast, and it's been great. I've loved it, and I've definitely been in do mode a lot more than be mode. And the symptom of that is, for me at least, I can sometimes lose a little bit of perspective and appreciation. And as a result, you start to feel a bit empty. It's kind of like the first agony. You start to feel yourself getting a bit drained. You maybe give in a little bit more because you're in due, right? So it led me to think, I wonder, what's possible here. But yeah, you reminded me of a lot of truths that I definitely believe and operate by. So thank you for that.
That's why you keep me around. So
try to push you away, but you just keep coming back. It's a great attribute of yours. I'm sure it's part of that astrology chart.
Yeah. It's human design. It's different, apparently. Anyway, we can get into that later. No, I think it's a great conversation, Tim, and I think it's a great thing to reflect on. I think all of us should. And it reminds me, part of the thing that I love about being a mentor in the movement and being part of the brotherhood, the inner circle guys, this morning, the inner circle guys got together, is you're in a conversation consistently with men who are bettering themselves and their relationships and their body and their business and their abundance, their spirituality, whatever it means to them. We have Muslims and devout Christians and atheists all talking about spirituality in an open sense that you can't help but start thinking about it yourself, or the relationships, the struggles, right? It's never easy for everybody always, but the struggles, and then guys are jumping in and saying, hell, here's what I'm doing. And here's some ideas. When you're in that conversation, it's easy to have your relationship on fire because you're surrounded by guys who are working on it, right? At a high level, and they're working on themselves. Just like when you're around somebody who's inspiring your body, your fitness, right? That's somebody that's transformed their body and still doing it. and is doing it in a very fun way, it makes you want to do a little bit more,
Mhm.
right? It makes you want to join in the fun. And that's really an interesting thing, especially when it comes to, coming upstairs and talking to my wife. And I take these conversations with her and we're able to have deep conversations because the men that I'm surrounded with are doing the same thing. They're playing at a
Mm.
higher level. So that high level becomes your norm.
Yeah, I love that.
Awesome conversation, Tim. Gentlemen, I hope you guys got something from this too. As always, if it's your first time visiting us, go over to thepowerfulman.com/bonus. Grab that Reignite cheat sheet. If you've been with us for a while, look, all I'm going to ask is you take something from this and you do the work, right? You apply it to your life to better your life, not only for yourself first, but also for your family and your community, as well as the world at whole. Right? Gentlemen, thank you so much. That's a wrap for us. We'll see you next time on The Powerful Man Show.